was to talk about education and creativity, not in the sense that education destroys creativity, but the fact it doesn't help very often.
From 0 to 12 years of age, no any kind of learning. No, today they want to do speed learning at the age of 3. Some people are saying when the mother is pregnant, how to teach the child mathematics. So till 12 years of age, we don't want to teach the child anything except to eat well, to play well, to sleep. Because these 3 things will decide how your body and your brain grows.
Think about this, children starting school this year will be probably retiring, if you can imagine such a thing, round about 2070. Nobody I know has any idea what the world will look like in 2 years' time or 5 years' time. Isn't that correct? The idea, until relatively recently, that you would have a college degree but not be able to find a job was ridiculous. It's not ridiculous now. A lot of people are graduating from college and going home again to play computer games because the jobs for which they have been training may not be available or there's too much competition, but mainly because the world economies are moving in a totally different direction. Innovation and creativity should be central themes of the process. Every education system on Earth currently is being reformed, everyone. And it's happening for 2 reasons. The first of them is economic. Everybody's trying to figure out how do we educate our kids to get jobs in these economies that we can't predict. And I think we all believe that. I mean, we all want that. I mean, anybody who thinks education's not about the economy, I think isn't really listening. The problems of social exclusion, of dropout rates, of disaffection, of the use of chemicals to keep people balanced. I don't want to bring you down here, but the rate of suicides among young people has increased throughout this generation, actually since the 1960s. Some people are turning off, some people are just checking out, because I believe, in part because they don't find a sense of purpose and meaning. They find their communities often to be estranging, and they don't, in many cases, find education the liberation it is intended to be. One of the ways our education system is out of date is it's premised on a linear assumption of social planning. One that was never true, by the way. It's a factory model. You go through the system, you qualify at the end, you go into this job that you were planning for all the time. I don't think that's true of most people. I don't suppose it's true of many of you, that you're doing the thing that you thought you'd be doing at the age of 15, if you thought of anything at the age of 15.
There are different dimensions of intelligence. Unfortunately, today in our education systems, we are exploring only one, which is the intellect. If I ask you a simple question, please you must answer this. Would you want your intellect to be sharp or blunt?
Sharp. Blunt.
Because only if it's sharp, it works well, because it's a cutting instrument. Yes? It can only dissect. Now, if you're using this intellect to do everything, to cut, it's okay. If you want to also stitch with it, you will be in tatters. So, the moment you identify with something, your intellect is striving to protect that identity. Young people, it's very important that if you cannot imagine a cosmic identity, at least a global identity is a must for you. Otherwise, you being empowered by education, you are the source of future disasters. Yes, see, I want you to understand this. Why is it? Why is it all the cutting-edge technology first goes into military use? National identity, isn't it? We have a cerebral capability which most human beings have not learned how to handle. Hello? You can call this stress, you can call this anxiety, you can call this misery, you can call this cruelty, you can call this murder, you can call this whatever. Essentially, all that's happened is your intelligence is turned against you, that's all. Why has this happened? Simply because of limited identities that you have taken. It may look like great, my family, my nation, it is all these people. See, if you're strongly identified with something, you're willing to die for it. Whatever you're willing to die for, you're also willing to kill for. Isn't that the only problem we have on this planet right now? Everybody is willing to die for something, and everybody is willing to kill for something. It could be family, it could be nation, it could be race, religion, whatever. Is it not time that you upgrade your way of how you identify yourself? With what do you identify yourself?
I think that many people never truly discover their talents, especially during the course of education, but sometimes never. I know all kinds of people who have no real sense of what they're truly capable of achieving, what their real talents are. All kinds of people who go through their lives not really feeling they're good at anything, just getting on, doing stuff that's necessary, but not really feeling deeply fulfilled by anything. And I think this is a major problem that education contributes to. It doesn't help because it's locked into an old model, the very model of social organization and economic activity that's given rise to the crisis in natural resources, I mean industrialism. That we have modeled our education systems on the principles and processes and mindsets of industrialism. We see education as an industrial process. One of the premises of the current system is that it's all about conformity. All the kids doing the same thing. In many countries, supported by a system of standardized testing. And a third way in which it's like a factory model is it's all done according to ages. It still amazes me that we educate people by age group. Why? You know, all the 8-year-olds together, all the 9-year-olds together, all the 10-year-olds together. Why? Yeah, it's like the most important things kids have in common is their date of manufacture. So in other words, the system is based on conformity and based on linearity and based on standards. In most of our countries, that continues to be the case. The challenge for education is not to reform it, which is what most countries are doing. They're changing bits and pieces here and there. It's to transform it into something else.
What your school means is, the present level of schooling, what it means is, cram yourself with all kinds of things. You pay attention to everything, you know what is inside a frog, how a frog's liver looks. What are you going to do with this? I'm saying every high school child is cutting open a cockroach and a frog, what for? I'm saying when you bring up children with this level of cruelty, a live frog, you open it up and enjoy his heart beating. What are you made of, I'm asking? You call this science? I call this inhumanity. I call this absolutely senseless way of raising your children. Oh no, we learnt so much. If they've learnt so much, that is enough. Show it on a computer how a heart beats. Where is the need for everybody to open up a live animal nailed to a piece of wood? Almost all of you have done it, right?
It was traumatic. Yeah, I was traumatized.
No, I'm saying, we call this education,
Yeah,
a heartless education. What is the point of a heartless education? If you do this kind of education, you'll create a heartless society, which you're seeing in so many different ways. So we must understand, we are not the only life. We are here as a product of all this life evolving to this place. We must at least show some sign of evolution, isn't it? We are supposed to be the peak of evolution on this planet. Should we not show that we are a little better than them?
Right.
But we are not showing this simply because we are screwed up with our scriptures, our textbooks, our teachings. No, please expose them to life. Child will understand life perfectly well. They are better equipped to perceive life than you are because they are not structured in their head. They perceive life. Oh, what will happen to them? How will they earn a living? If you allow a child to develop his body and his brain to the fullest, there are ways to do it, I can't go elaborate on this now, but there are ways where we can ensure the human body and the human brain has grown to its full size in every way. If you have a full-grown body and full-grown brain, they will know how to deal with anything for that matter. Half-grown brain but you're highly educated, what is the point? You don't know how to live. You may know how to extract something from the world. but you don't know how to live. Isn't that the fate of humanity right now, unfortunately? They know how to extract something from everything. I want you to know, they're extracting protein from microscopic bacteria. But still human beings are not healthy. So we know how to extract, but we don't know how to live because we are paying attention to everything. We are not paying attention to this. This needs attention.
My impression of this is this, that most adults think they're not creative. And yet all children think they are, don't they? Up to a certain age. Let me define creativity for you, as time is short. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. The process of having original ideas that have value. The beginning of learning how to be creative is to connect creativity back to intelligence. There are three misconceptions about creativity. One is it's about special people. It is not. In my experience, everybody has profound creative capacities, everybody. It's in the nature of being a human being. The second misconception is it's about special things. It's not. I mean, people think it's about the arts, for example, or design, or architecture. Well, all those things can be very creative. Not always, but they can be. But so too can anything. Some of those brilliantly creative people I know work in the sciences, or they work in mathematics. Divergent thinking is not the same as creativity or innovation, but it's a fundamental aspect of every creative process. Divergent thinking is the ability to see lots of possible solutions to a problem, to see many possible answers, not just one. And it often involves thinking in metaphors, or thinking visually, or thinking in analogies, analogically, not just logically, not just linear from A to B. It often involves reinterpreting the question. And a lot of really innovative thinking comes from not accepting the question at face value. It comes from reinterpreting the question and not taking anything for granted. That's really the key to innovation, not taking anything for granted, not even the question. We're all born with this capacity to think broadly, imaginatively, and to make lots of connections. What was interesting about this particular study was that it was longitudinal. So they retested the same children 5 years later. Now, a lot of things have happened to these children during the course of this study. A lot of things have happened to them. You know, they've gotten older, they've got hormones kicking in and so on. But one of the most important things that's happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated. You know, they've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer and it's at the back. And don't look, because that's cheating. And don't talk to anybody else while you're doing the test, because that's cheating too. Outside schools, that's called collaboration. But inside schools, it's thought to be cheating.
This is a serious mistake a whole generations of people have done, that if you study, how should you study? Hard. You must study hard. If you work, how should you work? You must work hard. Why didn't they tell you, you must study joyfully? Why didn't they tell you, you must work lovingly? No, you must do everything hard, and then you complain. You complain about everything in life because you're doing everything hard.
I know wonderful teachers, wonderful school principals, wonderful college lecturers, professors. I don't think it's deliberate. People don't set out to kill creativity. It's not deliberate, but it is systematic, nonetheless. It's routine and systematic. And it happens in several ways. One of them is the curricula of our schools, in all of our countries for the most part, are built on a hierarchy of subjects, where some subjects are thought to be much more important than other ones. And the effect of that is to rule out a whole swathe of children who are attracted to those ways of working. You know what the hierarchy is. At the top are maths, sciences, and languages, then the humanities, and then the arts. You know, the arts are important, but not so much theatre and dance, because there's another hierarchy in the arts. Art and music are normally taught more commonly than theatre and dance. I don't know many school systems anywhere where dance is taught every day, routinely to every child in the way we teach them mathematics. Why? An idea of utility built right in. You know what it's like. People would say to you, don't do art, you won't be an artist. Don't do music, you won't be a musician. So deep in the system, there's this idea that some subjects are useful and some are useless. And the effect of that is to deny children, I think, access to some of their best talents, whether they're interested in science or art. This is an argument for everybody. The second way in which this happens is we divide these disciplines up, and we think that the arts are totally different from the sciences. They're really not. The closer you get to the arts and sciences, the more alike they are, in many respects. But we've built systems of education which divide them and then set them up into a hierarchy. And the third way it happens is through this process of standardized testing, of only focusing on certain sorts of accomplishment for assessment purposes, mainly through letter grades and things of that sort. People over the age of 40, and especially people over the age of 50, many of us have had our tonsils taken out. Is this not the case? Millions and millions of people in the 50s and 60s, the 1950s and the 1960s, had their tonsils removed surgically. But my point is, not that nobody needed to have their tonsils removed, but that it was routine for a while. These days, some kids will have their tonsils taken out because some people need them taken out because they're critically infected and it's necessary. Mainly, it doesn't happen. It used to be routine. Doctors have thought better of it. And what seemed to be an epidemic is now recognized to be an occasional necessity. This generation of kids, our generation of kids these days, do not suffer from the plague of tonsillectomies. They suffer from this one. This is a map of America, as you can see. I don't know what the equivalent is at the moment in Europe, and certainly I don't know about Norway, but it'd be interesting to find out. This, I believe, represents the latest fictional epidemic that's affecting our children. That they suffer from, that we didn't, but they don't suffer from tonsillectomies. They suffer from this one. This is the alleged incidence in America of attention deficit disorder, of ADHD. What I can't believe is that it's an epidemic, that all our kids have got this. I don't know what the situation is here now, honestly, and I don't know what the European figures are, but in America, in the mid-1980s, it was estimated that 500,000 children suffered from ADHD, attention deficit disorder. The current estimate is 8 million. It's a $3 billion bonanza for the drug companies. Drugs like Adderall and Ritalin being handed out to our kids. Now, you can tell right away this is nonsense. Because according to this map, the pale areas are where there isn't much, and the dark areas are where there is more. So according to this map, there isn't much ADHD in California. I live in Los Angeles. Trust me, people can't listen for more than a minute in Los Angeles before losing interest. But according to this, there isn't much. According to this map, people start losing interest round about Oklahoma. They completely lose it by the time they get to parts of the Deep South. And when they get to Washington, they can't listen at all. Which may well, of course, actually be true. What this is really showing is a map of prescriptions. And what we're finding is that many schools, teachers, and parents are administering these drugs because it keeps kids focused on the program, but artificially. I have a big interest in the arts, and I've also mentioned the extent to which in science and mathematics, aesthetic experience is central to creative achievement. An aesthetic experience is one in which you are fully alert and living in the moment, where your senses are alive and you're resonating with the present, where you're kind of tingling with the excitement of the moment that you're experiencing. The opposite of an aesthetic experience, the opposite of aesthetic, is anesthetic. An anesthetic is where you close your senses down so you don't feel the discomfort. And I think that's what we're doing with our kids. We're anesthetizing far too many kids to keep them with a program. And the reason they're not paying attention is because the program, too often, is boring. And their minds are working faster than the program. And this is an important generational shift. We are nonetheless the species that produced Hamlet and the music of Mozart and quantum mechanics, and the internet, and 6,000 languages currently spoken on Earth, and telecommunications, and all the extraordinary convoluted achievements of human culture. I can put it this way, we are able to conceive uniquely of our own insignificance. Other species are not bothered by these images. We are, because at the heart of this is this extraordinary human power of imagination and the process that derives from it of creative thinking. I think of creativity as putting your imagination to work, and innovation as putting good ideas into practice. We all have this. It's a natural human power, and it's what's taken us from caves to conference halls, from eating carrion to cuisine, and what's produced all the extraordinary efflorescence of human thought. Feasible proposition. It's about changing institutions. It's about changing our social systems out of the old model of industrial education and organization to a new model. Actually, it's a more ancient model of agriculture. Human organizations are not like machines, though they're often represented that way. They are more like organisms. They thrive on feelings and sentience and aspirations and motivation. And like all organisms, they flourish under certain conditions and they wilt under other ones. Great leaders, I believe, are not like industrialists, they're like farmers. Farmers know that you cannot make a plant grow. The plant grows itself. What you do is create the conditions under which it will do that. And it's the same way in every human system as it is in nature. If you create the conditions for growth, the growth will come because it's sitting there beneath the surface the whole time. And I believe it's true with human systems too. Every one of us has this extraordinary power for imaginative development and for creative contemplation. And if the conditions are right, we'll give it. And if they're wrong, we'll hold it back and protect ourselves, which is what many people do in schools and many people do in our organizations.
Little babies in the first 18 months learn to speak, and nobody teaches them. Kids love to learn. The problem they have is with education, which is the time when we start to decide systematically to teach them things.
This aspiration for perfection is very death-oriented. It's something that most people have missed. The nature of life is, it's never perfect. Only death is perfect. If school is about life, then there is no perfect school. Most part of the education is trying to manufacture cogs for the larger machine that we have built. Our children are the fuel, unfortunately. We have to put them into some slot where they'll function well. And when we see the world is no more about people. The world is about the economic engine that we are driving. It's become bigger than us. We have to keep the engine going. We're scared to stop it for a moment. If I have to shape you into a particular shape that you must fit into a particular machine, it's a cruel process. But now we can't let the machine fail, it needs spare parts. Constantly it has to absorb, and humanity is the spare parts. So our children are the fuel and the machine parts which go into this to run the larger machine, that's one aspect. So this is why I have addressed education in three different dimensions. There is one form of education which is called Isha Vidya, I think they might have showed something about that. This is for the rural masses in India, where the problem is they are in an economic and social pit which they cannot get out by themselves. The only ladder for them is education, employment-generating education. But there are reasonably well-to-do people where they might have gone through that in the previous generation, but this generation need not think about how to earn my living. They have to look at how to expand who they are. So we have Isha Homeschool, which caters to that, because this kind of education costs money. So only people who can afford it can do that. Costs money means not like how it costs here. By Indian standards, it costs money. And there's another form of education where people are not interested in serving this machine or that machine, they want individuals to blossom. So we have Isha Samskriti, where there is no academic education of any kind. They only learn music, dance, art, Sanskrit language,
Kalari, which is the mother of all martial arts, and classical dance, classical music, yoga, English language as a passport to the world. The idea of this kind of schooling is just to develop human body and human brain without any intention. And human mind should grow to its fullest capability, and attention is the main thing. An indiscriminate and unprejudiced attention is what we're trying to evolve in the children, that they learn to pay attention to everything the same way, that you don't divide the world as something as good and something as bad, something high, something low, something divine, something devil, something filthy, something sacred. No, you learn to pay the same attention to everything. So I said, no certification, because doors in the world may open little slowly for you, but when they open, they stay open. Not because of qualification, but by competence you open doors. It is just that everybody is in a mad race, your children should do better than your neighbor's children. This is a disease. This is the biggest problem. Why education has become a problem in the world is, people become who they are in the world because of what they have gathered. This is a very unfortunate situation. Right now, whether it is material things or knowledge, whatever information they have gathered, it makes them who they are. Now, who you are and what you have gathered are two different things.
If I can say, one of the major problems, excuse me, I agree with all of that, is that we didn't have systems of mass education as we know them now, pretty much until the middle of the 19th century. You know, they were invented, made up.
Part of industrialization.
Yes, it was part of the Industrial Revolution, and it was associated with the big move from the countryside into the cities to provide a workforce for the industrial economy. It's very straightforward from that point of view. It was a massive piece of social engineering. It's why the system is shaped the way it was. We needed a majority of people to do blue-collar work, which is why we had a broad base of elementary education, and a relatively small group of people to do clerical administrative work in suits, which is why we had a small university sector. The system of education is burdened with certain ideological assumptions. One of them is a whole set of ideas about intelligence. The whole ideal of Western education is to get people to university. And therefore, and it's because the universities abrogated the system to their own purposes. And therefore, we have in the system this deeply mistaken assumption that that intelligence is the same thing as academic ability. Now, I mention it because it's a dramatic example, at least special ed is to me, of what happens all the time in general education. All kinds of kids are told they've got problems who don't have them. They're created by the system. And it's the problem of the system that we need to address, that if you reframe ability, all of these difficulties that people seem to be suffering from suddenly disappear. We now have a system based on competition, narrow view of ability, and one in which people are being medicated to stay with the program. They're being pathologized for losing interest in what is essentially very boring stuff. We sit them down all day long and wonder why they fidget.
We're looking for an evolution of a human being through the education system. The education system should be always an evolving process by itself. As one can develop muscle by doing certain things with the body, one can develop intelligence. By deadening the brain with too much information, definitely the possibility of intelligence is lost. What we are mistaking to be inner world is still external in my perception, because a child's fears, ambitions, aspirations are all external, inspired or infected, I would say, by the outside situation. It is not natural aspiration of life. Natural aspiration of life, if you look at it, if you leave someone uninfluenced from outside, the natural aspiration is always to expand, not to become less. But if you look at today's form of education, because it's purely intellect-based education, there's no other dimension of intelligence in it. And I think in this part of the world there is a serious mistake that intellect has been mistaken for intelligence. So the point is not about what we have gathered. What we have gathered is useful in creating comfort and convenience for the world. What we have gathered is not useful for creating well-being for ourselves and for the world. If well-being has to happen, we have to access dimensions of intelligence which are not intellectual, because intellect cannot function without accumulated information. If you function always out of accumulated information, you naturally get identified with it. So depending upon what you have accumulated, you become that kind. Because you have become that kind, another kind and your kind always goes into conflict. If the purpose of education is to expand horizons of individual human beings, you can see that's definitely not happening. The more educated somebody becomes, as people get educated, they really can't get along with anybody. The not so educated people can live together, 100 people can live together. Once you become educated, you become isolated, because this is the nature of the intellect. So in a way of our education has been to butcher the existence into tiny fragments, and we're trying to fix the fragments. It's not going to work like that. If education has to become holistic, there are systemic problems, I'm not saying no, but more than the systems, the people who deliver the system, if we can upgrade them in a huge way, every system can be made to work good. Whatever the system, if you upgrade the people who deliver this, if the best people… See, if we are interested in the future generations of our humanity, the best people in the world must go into teaching. But right now, the lowest grade of people are going because everything is determined by economics. How much are you paid? That's how you go.
Education has a whole range of functions, and that we have to address physical development, spiritual development, our emotional development, and all of that is tied up with a bigger view of consciousness. And therefore you need a school curriculum which has the arts, the humanities, the sciences, technology, not incidentally, not in a hierarchy, but equally and co-equally important. Teaching is what this is about, and teaching is not something that can be reduced to direct instruction. Teaching is not about telling people what to think, it's facilitating knowing. It's creating conditions where people will come to understand for themselves by probing them, questioning them, raising their curiosity, probing them so they might go in a different direction, giving them some tools, some techniques. It's a very sophisticated process, and one of the reasons that our education systems stumble is precisely because we've demeaned the profession of teaching, we haven't respected it in the way that we should, we don't compensate people in the way they need to be in order to concentrate on the job and do it properly. And, you know, and the best teachers aren't necessarily the ones with the most degrees. On the contrary, I mean, I know all kinds of very smart people with degrees who can't teach at all. And it's the big mistake that we've made. And the third bit of education is assessment. Well, assessment is important. I can't think of any education process that doesn't benefit by people making assessments of it. But assessment's not testing. Assessment is about making judgments of what's going on and whether it's worthwhile or it isn't, and how people are progressing. All great teachers do that. They're sensing whether this is happening or not. You know? So on the one hand, you've got conformity is one of the big principles of the current system. Well, if you want conformity, then you need compliance, and that's what the standardized testing movement's about. And this is a business. That's the point. It's a business, and it's really stifling our children at the moment.
I went to school only when it was absolutely necessary. I had very innovative ways of staying away from school. Because right from my childhood, one thing that somehow got stuck in my head was, if someone is saying something which means something to them, however simplistic or stupid it is, I'm willing to pay full attention. But if someone is saying something which doesn't mean a damn thing to him or her, but it's some big stuff, I'm not interested in that. Because if you're not interested in that, why should I listen to something that you're not interested in? So essentially, this instruction business comes from this. When you think you need to instruct somebody, you have assumed that those whom you instruct are of a lower intelligence than yourself, which is a serious mistake. There is sufficient scientific data to show everybody, every one of us who are 30 years of age are not as intelligent as a 6-year-old child who's just come into the school. There's substantial proof to show that. Only reason why we are looking out to be smart is because we have information and the child does not have information. So we're just showing off this information in the form of instruction. The spiritual teaching is for the stupid who lost life sense. People like you, I said to the parents. People like you who lost the fundamental life sense, you need a spiritual teaching. If you allow human intelligence, if you know how to nurture human intelligence without influencing it, because teachers think they have to influence, parents think they have to influence, religious teachers, of course, they want to influence. Intelligence need not be influenced, it just needs to be inflamed all the time. Wanting to influence human intelligence comes from, I think, in these parts of the world, there is a religious thread in the education system of very strong sense of opposites. Something is God, something is devil, something is heaven, something is hell, something is evil, something is good. This is so strongly set up in people's minds. Naturally, they want to influence because you think they will join the other party. Like how the two political parties in the country look like two religions as far as I'm concerned, the language that's being used on the news channels. This is very much present in the education mechanism, that we have strong sense of opposites. I think if you want to nurture human intelligence, this strong sense of opposites have to go. There is nobody in this room who is 24 hours good or 24 hours bad, isn't it?
You can talk about your liver and your kidneys as separate entities, but they only function together. It's about how these things connect that matters so much. So I think the better way is to see that thinking is also about making relationships and making connections and not seeing separation.
You can't raise children, you can raise cattle. You can't raise children. This is an idea you must give up. Children grow up, as Ken pointed out in the beginning, you can only create a conducive atmosphere. There are different ways to perceive the same thing. The receptivity in our mind is of different ways. If we have to get into technicality of this, in yoga we recognize 10 dimensions of receptivity. I'll talk about 5 because the other 5 are too esoteric. These 5 are referred to as centers of sleep, centers of memory, centers of imagination, centers of right perception, centers of perversion. It is there in all of us. If it comes something, let's say the same information or a same aspect comes to all of us right now. Somebody is lit to let the sleepy mode, some of them are. Let the sleepy mode, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is deep into their memory of whatever their experience of lives are, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is in a heightened state of imagination, they will perceive it one way. Somebody is in a state of equanimity, they will perceive it one way. Somebody has taken extreme positions of right or wrong, they will perceive it another way. So whatever I may give you, depending upon from which center you receive, accordingly it becomes that. So you may have 2 children, same home, everything same, all input same, but one will go like this, one will go like that, because every moment how they're receiving what is coming their way. An intelligence should not be influenced. An influenced intelligence is a dangerous intelligence. An intelligence which is on but not influenced will always be a solution. An intelligence which is profoundly influenced by this or that is always a divisive intelligence. It is me versus you, it will become. Strong sense of rights and wrongs, strong sense of this is it or that is it, will always create conflict, however good it may look to you. I think if human intelligence applies itself to every little thing will explode into a new cosmos by itself. This is what a human being is here for, to enhance life in such a way that no other creature can do it.
Education worldwide is estimated to be, just on the economic frontier, a $5.5 trillion business. It's why so many big publishers, independent entrepreneurs are getting into education, why so many tech companies are getting into it. It's like another gold rush. And I'm not against, people with good, interesting ideas getting involved in education, as long as we keep remembering it's children that we're dealing with and young people, and they're not there to make people profits. I think the real comparison is not with industrial manufacturing, it's with industrial agriculture, which also developed during the 19th century. And industrial agriculture completely subverted the old organic systems. It was based on mechanization, which meant that you could cultivate single crop farms as far as you could see. And you go to the Midwest, it's corn as far as the eye will take you, or it's potatoes as far as you can see to the horizon. That was made possible by mechanization. The other innovation was chemical fertilizers, which made it possible for things to grow bigger and faster. And the third innovation was pesticides, because once you created these big monocultural farms, they lacked the natural protectiveness that mixed farming creates. So we had to soak these things in these pesticides to keep them from being infested with insects. And it worked, has worked for a while. The problem is that it's destroyed topsoils around the world, which are eroding at a prodigious rate. It's poisoned waterways, it's polluting the oceans, and it's not sustainable. The whole world, we all depend upon a very narrow smear of topsoil, less than a few feet thick, that doesn't cover the whole world, it just covers part of it. Most of the earth is rock or water. And without this, we can't, and it's taken millions of years for this stuff to accumulate. And industrial agriculture is destroying it. And you see it, it's what happened in the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma. It's happened in other parts of the world too. The thing about this system, it's been very successful, but it's completely unsustainable, it's unnatural. Same thing with animals. We're keeping animals in these terrible compounds. We're pumping them full of antibiotics and hormones to make them grow bigger and faster. And because they live in these terrible conditions, they cross-infect, so we pump them full of this stuff. The thing about industrial agriculture, it's all been based on output and yield. And people will tell you that industrial agriculture the interesting thing is the focus is on the plant or the animal. It's getting it bigger. It's yield and output. Organic farming is based on the opposite principle, which is they don't focus on the plant, they focus on the soil. Exact opposite thing. If you get the soil right through natural process of composting and crop rotation, you don't need all these pesticides, and you don't need to keep renewing the soil. It does that itself. And the organic farmers know that. If you get the soil right, the plant will be fine. Don't focus on the plant, focus on the conditions of growth. And the same thing has exactly happened in our school system, I think. We've had these industrial systems. We've been focused on output, on yield. We've created sterile, inhuman conditions in our schools where people are not learning, even though we're getting data and so on. And along the way, what we've done is eroded the culture of learning. And all schools know, and I'm sure it's true of your schools, so if you get the culture of the school right, get the culture right, then things grow.
I think the most important thing that schools are missing out is exposing children to more natural phenomena in the world. They have become an isolated information, cocoons of their own. They are living their cosmos through the phone. It's very, very important, I think every school invests in taking their children out, exposing them to natural phenomena and different thought process in the world, different cultures in the world, so that there is a more homogeneous approach to intelligence rather than right and wrong kind of intelligence. I mean, what Ken just now said is the most important aspect, that is, education is not a production line, it's an organic happening. At the same time, from the question she asked, see, you cannot create an education system independent of the society in which we exist, some ideal system. America is America. As he said, some principles from Finland you can take, but Finland is protected by oceans on all sides and it is what it is. And cold also prevents lots of things.
America is what it is. Children are not just learning from their teachers, they're learning from the street, they're learning from the culture around. So you cannot ever develop an education system independent of the ecosystem that's happening. Are we as a society willing to in some way cultivate the ecosystem in the society which is suitable for a child to grow up in the best possible way, is a question that all of us should ask. Are we going to do what we like to do, or are we going to be conscious of how this will impact future generations? Every action that we are performing is an important thing that we need to look at. Because educating a child is not just a teacher's business or school's business or parents' business, it is happening all the time.